Watching viewers pop up here on my screen. It's nice to have everybody joining us again for our Facebook Live for Thursday. How many people can we get? Oh, I'm gonna have to reach over and grab my mouse. I love to read the comments too. There we are. Hi, Carol. Sandy's here today. Hi, Sandy. Anne's here and Eva. Nice to see everybody. So I'm going to see if I create anything by Xing out of this box. I'm gradually learning. I can't do that. Okay, so yes, welcome to Thursday. So it's been a long day. Been working in the morning and I was teaching all afternoon. So, what shall we do for Facebook today? And I thought I'm talking to quilters, so we're all kind of on the same wavelength, hopefully. And I thought I'm going to talk about inspiration. When I teach my long arm certification class, I talk about inspiration, perspiration, or the hard work, and then celebration when the work is done. So I was reading a magazine at home the other day, probably my Quilting Arts magazine, and they were asking some of their contributors, what inspires you? So I thought that would be a really good thing to talk about on Facebook. What inspires you as a quilter? And I kind of made a little list, so we're going to talk a wee bit about some of those things. And the first thing I think that we get inspired by is fabric. And of course, our Miss Dawn has put out some other fabrics for us to look at. And it's a really interesting fabric. I'm going to bring it up here so I can sort of hold it up and show it to you. This is one of the little bundles like that. A very bold, very modern, kind of a graphic looking fabric here. But I think the thing that's fun about this line, and it's called, this is Quarry, is it's printed on Essex linen, which is a cotton linen blend, and it has a texture to it. So sometimes our fabric inspires us, not just by how it looks, but it can inspire us by how it feels as well. We've just gotten in a whole line of new cuddle kits, cuddle on the bolt. There's another tactile piece of fabric. We have this stuff. I don't know if you've ever worked with this. This is our wax or canvas. So it literally is cotton fabric impregnated with wax to give it a water resistance. So fabric inspires us. Every time we walk into the quilt shop, we oh, I need one of everything. Yeah, unfortunately not. Sometimes we're inspired by magazines, and we are now carrying our Quilting Arts magazine. This is the most recent issue, great issue in that one. And this is an older one, so how's that for an inspirational photo? And it's the sort of magazine where you don't just look at it once. You look at it once, you go, oh yeah, cute. And then you go back to it and maybe look at a different article, a different set of pictures. That can inspire us as well. Obviously, the other thing that will inspire us, books. And we've got tons and tons of great books. I brought a couple out here. Something that's a little bit different. The Fiber Artist Guide to Color and Design. And this was the book that I used when I taught the color theory class. Feels like a gazillion years ago, but it wasn't really that long. It's an amazing book, not just because it's about color in your quilts, but about how you design your quilt, how you pay attention to the line and the scope of the quilt. Wonderful inspirational book, almost a manual if you're into creating your own quilt. And then the basic type of books like we have here. Sometimes we just have that piece of fabric that we bought. We love it. We're not really sure what we want to do with it. So yeah, something like this. very basic quilt patterns. So we can be inspired by the fabrics that we see, the fabrics that we touch, the books and the magazines that we read. We can be inspired by, obviously, things that we see online or things that we see on Facebook. And that includes some of the classes that we might see advertised. We sign up for a class, we're not really sure what to expect. I know Leah's been working hard on class scheduling for the fall, so stay tuned for some new classes coming out. Those can inspire us, get those creative juices going. We can be inspired by the world around us. The weather has finally decided to give us some beautiful summery kind of weather. We can get outside. We see the clouds, the colors in the sky. Do you want to make a quilt? And I did this a couple of years ago, just prompted by the colors at sunrise in February, where it's that taupey gray with the pinks and the purples, and amazing. So the world around us can inspire our next project. Sometimes we quilt for people. Sometimes we have a new family member, a new baby's being born, somebody that you know deserves a special treat. Maybe it's a birthday. So we make them a special quilt because they have inspired us to create something for them. And of course, we can often be inspired by other quilters. I've been here at the store for 5 years now, and the quilts that I have seen, I have many of them photographed on my phone. They're not attached to anybody's name. I'm not going to show you any pictures, but they inspired me by their use of fabric, their use of color, their use of design. Inspired me enough that I wanted to capture that image, and who knows down the road what's going to come out of that. So that being said, as a quilter, talking to quilters, I'm going to see if I can inspire you to try something a little bit different in your quilting journey. So we're going to do a little bit of history talk right now. About 21 years ago, before I really got into quilting, I had this whole stack of doilies and antimacassars and things from my mother and my grandmother, and I thought, I'm going to make a quilt. So I did. Carefully appliqued them onto pieces of fabric, and then realized that there was no uniformity in the size of piece of fabric I made, so I had to do a lot of piecing around them, and I made a big quilt out of that. You've maybe seen it here at the store. We had it on display for a while for teaching the doily class. So that was, like I say, 21 years ago. So after I started working here, we decided we'd teach that class. I started doing some internet research on quilts with doilies, and I ran across a lot of pictures online. So I thought, I'm going to give it another try. So let's see if this is going to show up if I hit this button. There we are. So this is just a little tiny sample of a doily, almost a little table center here. It's not very big. It's about 10-12 inches square. So preserving the past by stitching it onto fabric, and I like it. It's tactile. This is a silk around it, and it preserves that doily. So for quite a while there, I thought, this is lovely. I could make a whole bunch of them because I have lots of them. I found a website, a lady named Kelly Klein, who, that was what she did. She made quilts using doilies, and I followed that for a while. I was really inspired. And then I went, well, you know, I've got other old stuff besides just doilies and pieces of fabric. I have some old jewelry I might like to showcase. So I started a series of smaller quilts, little wall hangings, that I could use some of these old jewelry pieces on. So hopefully we can get a reasonably good image. I'll hold up the first one first, and then maybe we'll do some close-ups on you. I should tell you, my mother and my grandmother were both seamstresses. In fact, my grandmother was a seamstress furrier. And so I'm going to hold this guy up. There you go. Kind of, hopefully you get an overview of that one. It's literally called Grandmother Was a Seamstress. And this was one you'll probably notice that what has a lot of inspiration used in it. So, starting off right down here. This was a pin right there that somewhere I accumulated, I'm not sure where, that it reminded me of her. It wasn't my grandmother's pin. I think I bought it for myself, but it looked like something she would wear. This was one of those inspirational pieces of fabric. This is actually a sculpted piece of cuddle or minky. You can't see it on the camera. It's not going to show up really well, but it has almost a quilting pattern carved into it. And it so reminded me of the winter coat she used to wear, which was one of those black curly mouton coats. And she'd always have a pin on the lapel. So that was the inspiration. That's how it got started. So I did a block with a coat lapel with a pin. And then I found some polyester fabric, some blouse fabric. We made a little blouse. So that was one block. And then I thought, Grandma was a seamstress, so she would have made other parts of clothing. So kind of a fake blouse sleeve with a cuff and a button. And then because I had them and we want to be inspired, throw in one of our vintage handkerchiefs, just for texture, just for interest, just for design. I was also inspired by some scraps of fabric I had downstairs. This is that, remember that ultra suede that everybody wore for a while? I had a little scrap of that. The color went nicely. And that's how this one came to be. And so that was my first attempt at a quilt based on a piece of jewelry. Okay, and I thought that went pretty good. I liked that, and that was kind of fun. So I have more jewelry. Let's see what comes out of that. So switch back here. There we go. This was number 2. And this one, you can obviously see the pink rhinestone pin. Okay, that just so much looked like something that you would see in the 50s on the front door of a house at Christmas time. So that led to, whoops, there we go. Swing that around, switch camera feeds. So that led to mid-century modern Mabel. I had an aunt named Mabel, and I don't know if this was actually her pin and earring set, or if it was just looked like something she would wear. But it just had to be a Christmas wreath on the front door of a mid-century modern house. So it's a little hard to see with our cameras. Obviously, a totally different look. Lots of straight lines to give you that mid-century modern feel. Some bright fabrics. And, you know, of course you got to have that sparkly tinsel in the windows with the gaudy, shiny stuff here. But another way of focusing on some of those beautiful jewelry pieces that we don't wear anymore. And you can see it's not a huge piece. I think it's probably 24 inches square, hangs on the wall. Something bright and something that gave me the opportunity to explore different piecing techniques. This was a quilt math challenge on this one. So that was number 2, mid-century modern Mabel. Even has a California Christmas tree on it. Reminds me of the line from Charlie Brown's Christmas, where they want a nice pink aluminum Christmas tree. So that went fairly well, but of course we get distracted really easily in the quilting world. At least I do. Every time I see something new and exciting, I just want to give it a try. So, as I've been working on this type of thing, on exploring vintage linens and so on, people have been wonderful and gifted me a few things. So I thought, and I was gifted quite a large bag of old handkerchiefs, and they are wonderful to work with. They're, again, a very tactile type of fabric. They're soft, they're delicate. Some of them have the lace edgings, like on the first quilt. Some of them are actually embroidered by hand or by machine. Some of them have a design stamped on them, literally painted or dyed into them. So this one started off as a handkerchief, and that was literally printed onto a piece of handkerchief linen, the yellow roses, all of the leaves. And by this time I had gotten into doing hand embroidery. I'd always embroidered, and I love doing embroidery. So I sat down, I thought, I wonder if I could embroider over top of that. So that's what I did, and I got started, and I did, this is all satin stitched here, but this, the soft green fern shapes, that's just what, as it was printed on the handkerchief. So this is liberally stitched, and there's a trick to it. It is actually backed with fusible fleece. Even at that, sometimes that handkerchief linen would shred a little bit. So I get this all done, and I go, now what am I going to do with it? And then I realized, well, I could make another quilt to focus on a piece of jewelry. So my mother used to tell a story about her family in the UK, and they would always have yellow roses growing up. So she had in the past bought one of those Christmas rose pins, and I thought, that's perfect, a Christmas rose. I've got yellow roses. So I just pieced a brick pattern around the handkerchief and pinned the rose pin up in the corner. Haven't thought of a title of this one yet. I'm sure it'll come to me sooner or later. So another inspiration from family stories, from things that you happen to have in your home, in your stash, combining materials. And then I thought, oh, I have a really special pin that I think actually was my aunt's. And I know I've probably shown you, some of you folks, this guy before. We'll pop that on. I have this. Now this is a painted image on a piece of Limoges porcelain in a really tacky setting that's designed to look like a pocket watch for some reason. But it intrigued me, so I thought, what can I do to play off on that one? Now, by this time, I was really getting interested in types of embroidery. I had picked up a book. As I say, books are always an inspiration to me. This one was called Blended Embroidery by a gentleman named Brian Haggard, and he embroiders on top of wool pieces. Oh, there goes my camera. Hang on. Are we back yet? There, now we're back. Okay, so I'll show you the whole piece, and I know some of you have seen parts of this guy. There we go. Like that. And you can see how the pin is kind of designed to look like it's pinned to the front of a garment there. So in this one, I have used kind of a variety of the inspirational things that I have been looking at recently. So these are actually circles of wool felt, layered and then embroidered on top of. This is very much like Brian Haggard's blended embroidery. And that was actually put on last. I know we did a Facebook thing with the border fabric cut out and overlapping onto the inner border, and that's how the butterflies got on there. Obviously still using a handkerchief just because it kind of went along with the theme. And then this was again a piece of silk. I love silk. I love how it feels. It's soft, it's smooth. So a piece of silk that is quilted, that gives you that it's quite stiff. It's very matchstick quilted, nice and stiff, nice and flat and smooth. Then I have my handkerchiefs. I opened up this box of handkerchiefs, discovered there were 3, not 4 in there. So we had to do a little designing around that. And then the rest of the silk was just pieced in and bunched up and gathered that way. I very much create with the flow of things. I don't always have an end goal in mind. I have kind of a sort of a destination. But this one I called Le Papillon because it just reminds me, papillon, of course, French for butterfly, but she just reminds me of the beautiful French ladies back in Napoleonic times, meant to look gorgeous, to decorate, and yet perhaps a little bit sad because they're not able to get out. So again, jumping off on that one, another piece of jewelry. So I'm working on another one because it's become an addiction. And the minute you go and you start talking about some of the things that you're working on, people go, hey, I have, and you will be gifted with things. So my sister gifted me 3 more of those lovely rhinestone pins. So I am working on another piece at home. If I ever get back to it, I seem to be getting distracted by a whole variety of things these days that will eventually probably show up on Facebook as well, that showcases another of the pins. And it's a jumping off, design-wise, from a t-shirt that I have had for many, many years with a goofy thing printed on the front that I just liked the look of. So you can take your inspiration from anything. You can take it from the world around you, from books, magazines, fabric, other quilters. Just relax, open your mind, and let it speak to you. Because as someone I knew once said, this whole world of quilting, it's not just about making another blanket for the bed. We're not doing this because we're cold. This is a way of expressing ourselves. It's a way of communicating something to somebody else. It's a way of preserving the past, investing in the future. You make that quilt, that I Spy quilt for the new grandson, that's your expression of love for them. And I think it is absolutely amazing. It's what keeps us going. Thank you, Anne, Carol. It's so nice to see everybody on Facebook. I'm really glad you guys join us all the time because it's great to keep that connection. We are kind of a family. Billy wants to know the name and author of the color book. I sure can, Billy. This is called A Fiber Artist's Guide to Color and Design, and the author is Heather Thomas. Okay, can we see it there? Perhaps I will ask Tyler. We do have this in stock at the store if you're interested. It's out on the floor, and if you're in the store, you can certainly pick it up, but you can always pop it into an online order as well. Okay, great book. Really, really great book, especially if maybe your quilting is starting to become, I won't say boring, but perhaps a little repetitive and you want to branch out. So hopefully we've inspired you with a little bit for today. That's about as far as my brain will take me today, but I'm sure we're going to have some new Teresa has vintage items from my mom and grandma. I may have to try something. Anytime you want advice with that, Teresa, by all means, give me a phone call. Stop by the store if you're close by. We can have a little chat. We're still working with our class ideas, as some things just don't translate well to a Zoom class, but we'll do what we can to help you out with things like that, certainly. So that's about it for today. I think we're going to have Miss Ann up for you tomorrow with something new from, I think she's doing Bernina Creative Studio earlier in the day, so possibly tied in with that. And have fun, everybody. Enjoy your quilting. Be inspired. Remember, creativity is allowing yourself to make mistakes. Art is knowing which ones to keep.